In our last video, we got all the drum tracks sitting pretty well in the mix after we had done all the triggering and all the flex time to get them to live on the grid. Pretty nice. We've got the overheads and room squashed a little bit with Logic's compressor. Warmed up the toms, panned out the hi-hat, did a nice quick blend on the kicks and snares to get everything sitting pretty well. So now we have a good basic foundation for our track. We have the kicks, snares, toms, the whole thing kind of gelling together, and compression certainly doesn't hurt that. The next thing we have is our bass keeper track. Which is not bad, kind of in context. But there's a couple things that we could do, certainly to help the sound of the bass and kind of work better in the context of a rock and roll track. So we're going to use the bass keeper track. The bass in case track we can actually lose completely. I'm going to turn the volume down on it. But the bass keeper track, that's the bass take that went to mix for the song. So on this, I'm going to add a little bit of amp simulation, because if you listen to the bass, it's picked and it's dry. And it could just use a little bit more hair on it. So we're going to go to audio effects. Actually, I take it back. In our settings, in our library, I can search the library for Rock Stack, which I believe is in our legacy setup there. But if I'm going to electric guitar and bass, you'll find something probably similar here in Clean Bass, Big Stack, some of those things there. I really do like the Rock Stack preset. I've been mixing this since we were in Logic 9 and before. So in Legacy Logic Bass Guitar, Rock Stack does a really good job, and that's a series of plugins here that adds amp simulation, some EQ, compression, and then right out of the gate when I press play, it's a lot more aggressive. It speaks a little better. Here's before. There's after. So let's hear that in context with our tracks. So that does a pretty good job overall of compressing the bass, kind of getting it to live in about the right place. The one thing you'll notice too now is the kick drum kind of disappears with the bass doing what it's supposed to be doing there and kind of keeping the track driving. So again, trying to do everything in context, we want to keep the bass kind of nice and fat and steady state like it is. And then we also want the kick drum to punch through the track as well. So going back to my kick trigger track, and yes, I could just try turning it up. And while it helps, it does contribute to the problem that we'll have later on in the track, which is just turning things up stops working after a while. So we have to act a little bit smarter. So our kick, we're actually going to exaggerate the top end and the sort of sub sonic frequencies as well, so that the bass stays where it is, but we actually get a little bit more on top and bottom. So we're kind of making like a bass sandwich with our kick drum. So I'm going to add an EQ here for kick trigger. And also the nice thing is, since this is a trigger track, it doesn't have any bleed from any of the other instruments being played at the same time, a snare drum or whatever else. So we can go in and EQ our kick drum. And actually, if I take a look here, we don't want to make it too papery, but just to exaggerate, here's about 5K. A little bit above that. So I'm going to give it a pretty good boost right around 4.5K, 4,600. And then down here at the bottom, I can give it just a little subsonic boost there. It's already pretty rockin'. I can turn it down a little bit. The bass mainly lives in this sort of 100 to 200 range, and Logic's really good at showing us this. So if I go here, line them up, this is our kick drum, and here's our bass. So there's a little bit of overlap here, but there's still a lot of what's going on is happening in this area, and we're trying to keep that clear somewhat here. I mean, we could even go and kind of cut around where the bass is a little bit. I don't want to go too far because we'll lose kind of the fundamental frequency of the kick. And there's a little boost here on the bass. I'm going to bring that down because that's primarily where our kick drum, the point, is living. Just a hair. And so now we have the kick drum and the bass drum, the kick drum and the bass guitar living in approximately the same frequency space, but we kind of carved away real estate for each in there. That helps a lot. Also, to keep things from getting too muddy, you can see it was already done here with a low pass, but I can go in and kind of carve away the subsonic space here where we would expect the kick drum to live, down there a little bit with that filter. So now there's a little less interaction down there as well, keeping things nice and clean, and everybody's got their own little space. So now the track is starting to come together. We got the kick and bass, which that's the primary foundation for the track. Everything sits on top of that in layers. So the next thing we'll be doing is kind of dialing in our guitar tones and getting them to live in their own particular space and fill up the rest of the track. Most of that's kind of the low mid-range and mid-range, and we're working our way up until we get to the vocal and the final mix and master.